The hidden aspects of the letter theta and the number 9, as we've never learned before: numerology, divinity, the human soul, divine union. And this is following what we recently learned about Tesla. He always did things in 3, 6s, and 9s. He wouldn't even go in a building unless he went around it 9 times. He believed in a special energy of the frequency. These are the 9 muses of ancient Greek theology, but it's a very important thing for us to know about this. The letter theta is alone in column 9. The letter 9, theta, as if to review and adjust everything, the first 9 coming to an end. 9 prime numbers also confirm the number of muses. Now, the letter theta, described in Greek as a 0 with a dividing line in the middle, horizontal line. This line expresses a level of the horizon, for example. If we look at the horizon through a telescope, we'll see a G, where G is the view of the divine beings. But this horizontal line also denotes death, so O, the horizon line, is recognized by the word of the 9th east. But the letter I begins with the word God, that is the one who is from above and overlooks, and it is God who dissolves in the light and with his truth and darkness and oblivion. Now, the word God, which is theosis, theos in Greek, starting with the letter theta, is the position of God. The letter E, which is the coming of Greeks and the exception energy as receiver. The letter O, the earth, circle of life. And the letter S, which is the reciprocating motion, U, that is. God is the view of the above forces, gods and goddesses, which is addressed in the cycle of life through the continuation, reciprocation motion of the frequencies. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. So these eternal beings are simply never created, and they are eternal because they possess the primary power, and by nature they do not suffer anything, nor are essentials, the essences of gods, composed of bodies, because the forces within the bodies are always incorporeal, nor are they contained in space, but because that is a property of bodies. They are neither separated from the first cause nor from each other, just as thoughts are separated from the mind, nor are the acts of knowledge from the soul. So, the acts of knowledge and our thoughts are parts of our soul. First follows the knowledge of the first cause and the consequent order of the gods, as well as nature and the world, the essence of the mind and the soul. Then providence, the addiction and luck, and the virtue and the evil, and the various forms of social organization, good and bad, that come from them, and the possible origin of evil in the world. We know that the myths present to us in the gods themselves and their goodness, always according to the distinction between the explicit and the implicit, the invisible and the obvious, the explicit and the implicit. The gods have made common to all the goods of the senses, but the goods of the mind seem to have been given only to the wise. So the myths tell us everything that there are gods, but who they are and what their powers reveal it ultimately only to those who can understand it. There's no other explanation. Because we can also call the world a myth, where bodies and things are visible, but souls and minds are hidden. If we want to teach everyone the truth about the gods, on the one hand, the fools, quote unquote, will despise it, precisely because they will not be able to understand it. And on the other hand, the good will get bored of it. So if you hide the truth, With the myths, you can prevent the contempt of the fools and force the good ones to practice philosophy. Now, the attributes of the gods. In order to have a natural penetration into our soul, we must be changed into archetypes correctly by the heavenly transaction of the divine beings, and this transfer of brotherhood is done with endoscopy. Endoscopy is the universal view of each examined concept, which of course follows sin and dia and calculation. The mind is a pure essence, which has the ability to create authentic reasonings after the knowledge of causes which they bring to interknowledge and results. The causes are usually hidden, and the only way to reveal the hidden causes of nature is the purpose of our thought, which will create the purified reasoning. Through the intellect, the mind, or theos, we form an opinion from our environment in advance of general beliefs that skillfully surround us, differences between the commonly accepted and authentic endoscopic examinations of concepts. People with hypersensitive psyche seek through the flash the path to divine fields, which they do not know, but they forget the priority of the internal search and knowledge of the self. The basic condition of psychosomatic and psychomental health. So without a healthy psychosomatic and psychomental body, access to transcendental fields is almost impossible. Without a healthy psychosomatic and psychomental body, access to transcendental fields is almost impossible. Without a healthy psychosomatic and psychomental body, access to transcendental fields is almost impossible, as we said. Now, third God equals the three gods, the Holy Trinity equals 999, number 999. The pediment of the temple gives us the gable, the aiatoma, meaning of God. For this, the shape of the Holy Trinity, the consolidated three, the triune God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's obvious and generally accepted by scholars that the letter I symbolizes the divine. This emerges from the study of both archaeological finds and language. I and iota. And remember, our Lord Jesus Christ said, don't change not even one iota or tittle or stroke. There are, of course, different scriptures for the letter IX, meaning Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, which express different meaning of the divine. The theological point of view of our ancestors was the generative cause of their incredible spiritual achievement. The divine is everywhere, and humans are its bearers, and therefore the pursuit of deification, divine union, and virtue is imperative, but also self-evident for Greeks. Ancient Greeks wrote this, of course. This is what they're explaining. Theosis, meaning the divine union with God, is the purpose of existence, an obligation of the pious, and that is why the Greek gods have many faces, so that all the moral faces of divine nature lead to deification. Even war as a necessary evil is also expressed with the divine face as Mars. Of course, by war we mean the synthetic balanced forces developed by cosmic or earthly or human actions and reactions. In general, the absent respect of ancestors for the divine, apart from the symbols, also passed into the language. This is how we see the representations of Hercules, Hephaestus, showing us the exact mechanism unknown to us, probably hierarchical, which imposed the pre-flood rules on language. Thus, due to divinity, the letter I was added in front of the names. That is, Hercules, The becomes Therakles, hence God Hercules, and Hephaestus becomes Hephaestus, that is, God Hephaestus. Similarly, the Homeric letter I is added, that is deified after it finally becomes C, Thalasas. The letters, words starting with the letter theta, th. The reason for which the sea was deified are because it was the main tool for the cultural, economic, and social development of the then frantic, ambitious, and nocturnal Aegean Greeks. The ninth letter, the letter of the deity, 9, exists and defines those words which denote a divine presence, divine origin, divine origins, and divine origins. The word theos in Greek means God. Theta again, the word letter theta, would be unthinkable for us Greeks if it did not have the letter theta in front of it. But even in the word anthropos, as the letter I is in it, is because it has a view. Now the soul of man approaches the divine and the etheric fields which God is, in which God is. This highest theological philosophical knowledge is an attempt to deify and approach the truth. We also know that the perpetuation of our species is done mainly by women, and it would be inconceivable not to have the letter theta, theli, meaning woman, carries life through matter, and embraces the hearth, that is the house, the family, and creates, so necessary for the development of the family. Thus, without the divine does not mean the ideal of family according to the divine natural laws. But we know very well that in the end comes a divine which none of us can avoid, showing the finity, the finite of our body, which also the phase of union of the soul and the divine from which it emanates, and to the remnant, the theta remains. But for there to be perpetuation of our species, it does not mean without some diet, that is food. The word food may not be the perfect to describe all the substances we consume, because we're not simply talking about nutrients, but generally about digestion and not nutrition. That which is offered to us by the divine for food is a goddess. That which is processed and created by man for consumption by putting traces on food, because he acquires the letter theta, which means that art and craft. For example, nature gave us the necessary nutrients to make, for example, a pizza, but we need art to complete this recipe and its final product, where it does not exist in nature, thus classifying it in food. We know historically that man, in the difficult geological periods nourished by nature, he was a hunter-gatherer, and his diet usually consisted of greens, fruits, roots, etc. These are all foods. As a hunter, however, he knew very well to consume meat which he took from his prey as a result of the prey being there. Therefore, he was not prey. He also ate fish with, fish, okay, ichthys, meaning fish. Thus, developing the structure of society, the perceptual influence of the divine played a primary role, and we see that the symbolism of the words which he used and which determined the supremacy of the Greek alphabets, here the letter theta is Greek alphabet, we see necessary the letter I, and the Greeks wanted to be ruled by divinity-inspired kings, divinely inspired kings who would be in contact with the divine through, for example, throne, the throne, the divine, the king would sit on the throne, again starting with the letter theta. Mythology abounds in similar references. Thus, the Greek society had clear features such as eta theta and its sacrifice, thesmos. And the meaning, the main thing was the essence as a supreme conscious offering to the divine, as a conscious act of recognizing, honoring the offering of nature to man. The sacred intoxication of the god determined the advanced ecological conception which reached the deification of nature. But always before the communion, that is, of the divine communion, the physical and mental purification proceeded. Thus, divination gave another aspect to the deeds of life. The oldest oracle was that of the Doni, dedicated to Zeus, and it received the divine messages through the god eating of the leaves of the sacred fig tree. And these may sound a little strange to the ears of some, but they just do not know. For example, mentioned in that on Mount Olympus, where the ancient Greek gods had their encampments, supposedly, several omens were given through birds and living organisms to find out what the prophecy would give. So in the long run, stories and perceptions of divine manifestations were finally codified and artfully concealed in mythology, so that they do not constitute accessible material to the profane and unworthy of receiving them. Mythology is a matrix that reproduces the manifestations of the divine, necessarily contains the letter Theta. In those days, the main goal of the education of ancient Greek children was the free-mindedness. Thus, the ancient Greek education, the constant pursuit of God, theos, courage, patience, and the megathemia was as well as learning. The pursuit of the students at the time was the great achievements, which are achieved with God, through God, but mainly with enough fortitude. Thus, the education system led the youth through political and national responsibility to freedom. Until now, we knew that the holiest land of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, was that of the area of Olympus, the supposed residence of the ancient Greek gods of the Greeks. But officially, we were told that this is not the case, since it is the second energy center of Earth, since the first energy part is Mount Taygetus near Sparta in Greece, where a pyramid is built, and that the third is the son of Troy. And the ancestors knew that Olympus was the highest mountain in Greece, and surrounding area was originally called Thraki in Thrace. The word Thraki has, for the first letter, theta, denoting the view, the second meaning the letter P, R, that is, which is shown as the flow of energies we receive, and the third letter is A, denoting the initial force. The fourth is K, the life cycle, final letter eta, through the descending solar radiation. So the name of this area in this country was a sacred place for the ancient Greeks of that time. 9, dividing 9 into 9, the new beginning, the returning of, well, this is very strange for me, I can't even understand. Number 9 has a unique property that no other number has. Thus, with any number that is multiplied, the resulting number has a product number as 9 as the bottom letter. Also by successive trips of 3s, that is by 9, 27, etc., the universe has been created, including, of course, the material world. And we know that according to Neoplatonic philosophy, these are classes of gods, beginning with the supreme God, descending by the continuous degree of the infinite number of fallen angels, demonic entities, which each higher level contains as part of the lower ones and can participate in them as well. For example, the female goddess Athena can at the same time descend into the material universe and appear as Athena, visible to humans. The meaning of number 9 is great and symbolic. 9 is also connected with the transition cycle of constellations as a divisor of its subdivisions. The 36 decans, the 72 years that the transition of a degree is completed, the 2,160 years that the transition between constellations takes place, etc. I didn't even know this. 36 is not 4 times 9. The 72 years, 8 times 9. The transition of a degree is completed 2,160 years that the transition between constellations takes place. The word theon is lexically equivalent to 144, which has a bottom lexicon of 9 divisible by 9. and is a number declared on the temples of the Greek gables, the aetoma. 9 months of childbirth, where after man, which a human is born, and is not a coincidence. It just reminds us that respectively, through the 9 muses, we have to gradually go through our spiritual state in order to have the final view. And when we write about 9 muses, each one is governed by 1 dimension. A total of 9 dimensions, with an equalizer ether, where is separated in 2 fields so that they do not mix and neutralize each other. Now, the sum of internal angles of each regular polygon always produces 9 as a bottom number. Also, if we start constantly dividing the angle of 360 degrees, 9 will always be produced as a bottom number. So, very strange. The code of the Greek alphabet, the base is number 9, and the word theos starting with letter theta. Theta 318 equals Ilios, meaning sun in Greek. Very amazing things here concerning the dimensions and even having to do with astronomy and constellations. Amazing. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.